We haven't even gotten into this new film yet, Prescription Suicide, and we have the Emmy award-winning director right here with us. We're so honored to have him. And we're talking to a author. I know it's tough to talk about, but Gwen, please continue with what happened with your niece. She gets this phone call. She's going to be taken forcibly and be put back on the drugs. Tell us what happened.
And we have already done all the research, so she is fully aware of the fact that, and she's very intelligent. As I said, she was an honor student. She was pre-med. So she knew that she was having the adverse reactions as well. And she decided, as she had told me a couple of days before that, she said, "Aunt Gwen, I'd rather be dead than be crazy. And those drugs made me crazy." And I told her that I understood. I completely understood and believed what she was going through. Well, when my sister was on her way home, Megan first tried to hang herself with her shoestrings from the ceiling lamp in the living room. And the weight of her body made the ceiling lamp fall, so she wasn't, the fan made it fall, so she wasn't successful. So she was so desperate that she then went into one of my younger niece's bedrooms and took an angel-shaped lantern, an oil lantern, and poured the oil over her head and set herself on fire.
Oh.
And at some point, she must have changed her mind, or she must have been in pain or something, because the two younger girls had taken a bath that morning and their bath water was still in. And apparently, according to the EMS report, she had gone in and she tried to extinguish the fire in that bathtub, and she was unsuccessful, not knowing the oil would be spread. And by the time that they actually came to get her, she was uncommunicative. They said she opened the door and then she fell backwards, and that was the last of it. It took about 35 minutes for them to get her to the Brackenridge Burn Center, and excuse me, and she died when they got there. She had second to third degree burns over 95% of her body.
I mean, it takes incredible will. Most men can't do those type of things to themselves. And just for anyone out there listening, don't ever try to put yourself out with water. You roll. You get a blanket. That's how you put a fire out. But unbelievable. That's almost like those Buddhist monks in Vietnam that would douse themselves and sit there meditating as they burn to death. I mean, the place, the mind, and you read about cops pull up, and I hear about these stories all the time. I'm a news hound, and you hear about it every week. A woman dancing naked, stabbing herself with butcher knives on top of a building. Woman running around foaming at the mouth, and it's always some lawyer, some doctor, no one who had ever any history of mental illness. And they're put on these drugs, or they quickly go off of them. That can cause it too. And it's total psycho world. Then you go read the inserts, and it says that it does exactly that. I want to get some comments of, I would say, your colleague. And Robert, you produced this film. Tell us about the film. And in the film, there are two other Austin families that have had similar nightmare tragedies as well. Tell us about that.
There are two Austin families. One, the McIntosh, who lost their daughter. She was 12 years old, and she hung herself by her shoelaces at school. And the other family is the Brooks, who daughter Tanya was put on Paxil and tried to cut her leg off. And the mother took her right off the drugs, and she's doing great right now. She's completely off those drugs. But she was put on them for anxiety. Tanya was put on the drugs because she had a problem going to places where there are people, being around people. Now, who doesn't have that problem?
Well, I mean, everybody has those agoraphobic feelings when they're 12.
Right.
Exactly. You know, if the restaurant's too crowded, if I'm going by myself and it's too crowded, I just turn around and go away myself sometimes. And she had that, so they put her on Paxil. No depression. And Caitlin was 12 years old, and similar story. Caitlin passed away, and Tanya survived. And the families in this, we have 6 families. 3 of them are alive. They're all kids, and 3 have committed suicide. Candace, which is from Washington area, was 12 years old. She was put on it for anxiety. I spent a week in their home. No signs of depression whatsoever. Beautiful, beautiful girl. She hung herself in her bedroom, and she was on Zoloft. We had Ray Jr. from Memphis, Tennessee, who wasn't depressed. He was just trying to get high. And one of his friends got his mom's drugs, and they were getting high off it. He was on that for about a week. He called his dad up. His daddy raced home. He pulled a shotgun, not shotgun, I forgot what size gun, but shot himself in the head while his father raced home for lunch. We have Devin, who was 9 years old. She's from the East Coast. She tried to jump out the window. She was on Paxil. They thought she had anorexia. The parents kept telling the doctors, hey, have you looked into these infectious diseases such as Lyme or Pandas? And the doctors kept saying no. They kept upping the medication. She tried to jump out the window, 9 years old. The parents finally went to a doctor in New Haven, Dr. Jones, and Devin was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And it's a common thing that happens.
Well, I had a family member who was bitten by a tick and got it, and they lost like 30 pounds and turned white. I mean, white as a sheet. And I guess now if you do that, the answer is don't get medical care. In fact, I read about a large portion of people who are in car wrecks now. The doctor walks in and says, are you feeling depressed? Well, yeah, I broke my hip. Feeling really bad? Yeah, I'm depressed. Well, I'm going to give you some of these. It's all being engineered to get people on these drugs, and they know. I mean, 20 years ago, you never heard of little girls cutting themselves or jumping out of windows or electrocuting themselves or pouring gasoline on themselves or whatever, killing themselves. And then now, I know so many couples, so many middle-class, wealthy people, their daughters are all on it. A boyfriend breaks up with them, somebody calls them ugly, and they get depressed, and then they go and they put them on some of these drugs, and then they go from being depressed to the phenomenon of young people cutting themselves. See, it's doing something in the brain. They admit in the development of it does this. The drug companies, folks, at the high levels, know it does this and know that it's going to get you into the system. We have to stop this. Over 15% of our children now on it, almost 16%. Those are the latest numbers. Had Dr. Breeding in yesterday. And now over 15% of adults. I mean, this is epidemic, and it's only growing. And it's so hard for the average person to get their brain around this. But if you will go research these neuroleptics and these psychotropics, they're in the hallucinogen class. Now, you did something that most other films just get into the science of it, as you said. Robert, you got into what's happening in your film, Prescription Suicide. It's about to come out. Pre-orders are already being taken. In fact, I've got one of the first right here in my hand. It's now being mass-produced right now. You'll be shipping in the next few weeks. You can go to the website and order these. And I want to carry them later, but right now they're on the Prescription Suicide website, and there's a link to that at Infowars.com. But tell us, you were telling me during the break, you got into this with an open mind. You said, I'm going to make a film about this and see what's really going on. You weren't some expert on this. You just went and made a film showing what's happening from the personal view, and that's what makes this film different.
Exactly. I was a good friend of mine brought an article to me, and it was an article about Mark Miller, who is a big advocate out of Colorado, who lost his son, who hung himself in the closet, and I thought, what a great documentary, what a great story to tell. I was amazed. I was speechless by it. So we took a year to research and find families that would participate with it. And the difference is, I didn't want to do a documentary like that has been done, the kind you see on 2020 or whatever, where you have the experts on one side and the victims on the other side and being balanced and whatever. I wanted to do an emotional story. I wanted to tell a story. I wanted these families to come out and tell their stories of what they went through their eyes, through the kids' eyes who have survived. And that's what I did. It's definitely an emotional roller coaster.
I'll tell you what's scary. Now there's this move to make people take these. And Big Pharma is paying for, about half the advertisement or more on the nightly news. You open magazines, especially women's magazines. Gwen, I want to get your take on this. And I know you talk about these subjects in your book, Confessions of an RX Drug Pusher, and I want people to learn how they can get this. But why are they mainly targeting women? I mean, I know that 80% of advertising already targets women. I learned that in college because women make most of the purchases. The other 20% is targeted at limited groups of men who make, on average, larger capital outlays. But most marketing itself is targeted at women, and it's no different with this situation with the drugs. And not just the psychological effects, also I've interviewed so many medical doctors on this, the toxic effects of it, but just as a woman who sold these, had problems taking them yourself, losing your niece through it, I mean, just your view on how this affects women.